Hello, my name is Trevor, leading people through the dark night of the soul. Today we're going to be talking about mind how you go. It's all in the mind, as they say. Remember how your mum and dad or your grandparents used to say to you when you were younger, before you went out, always mind how you go. I used to look at that and think that they were being caring, compassionate, trying to feel secure that you're going to be okay when you go out. But what did it actually mean? About 30 years later, I used to hear my nan, who has now passed over, remind me of mind how you go. And through this process of mind how you go, I started to understand the power of my own mind. And it wasn't just because I was going to go out there on the streets, be careful, mind how I cross the roads. Of course, we need that. But it's such a great saying when you think about it. I want to take that statement to the level of divinity. If there was a message from the Great Spirit or from an angel, this is what they would say. Because this is what happened to me in the dark night of the soul. What was actually killing me was my mind. The voices in my head, whose words were they? When the dark night of the soul ascends upon you, the mind gets very confused. It's as if someone else is talking in your head, and you're trying to distinguish what thoughts are yours and what thoughts are not yours. So the greatest message that I discovered from my dark night of the soul to myself was mind how you go, because it is all in the mind. Do you remember when you was young and maybe you experienced some form of pain and you would go to the doctors and they couldn't find anything wrong with you? And I remember hearing the doctor tell me that it's all in the mind. And I used to think, it can't be. How can it be in my mind when I have so much pain? As the years have gone on and I have become a healer, what was the main important thing that needed to be healed? And of course, it's the mind. In the dark night of the soul, you're battling your mind. So you want to try and understand, why is this happening? Once you can heal the mind, you can actually heal anything. And the interesting thing about the mind is that it is completely yours, or supposedly we think it's ours. But when the dark night of the soul kicks in, you're battling this voice, this command. Maybe the mind is even telling you to commit suicide. But remember, it is your mind. And I think when darkness comes upon you, I think it is the battle of the mind. I think this is how you control people's souls, through the mind. But remember, the mind is yours. You have to try to control it. But as you have realized as you go through life, your mind is full of experiences. Your positive mind and your negative mind. This is where we seem to have two minds. That was the mind that you used to have. But when the dark night comes in, it seems like you're dealing with three minds. Your positive mind, your negative mind, and then the dark night of the soul's mind. And you're thinking to yourself, my God, I don't know where I am in this. I don't know why this is happening. I don't know how to control it. But remember this, your dark night is a messenger. But when you start to understand the power of the mind and the ego of the mind, then you start to access the divine teacher within your mind. So it's going from bad mind energy into beautiful mind energy, because basically what we're looking for is a beautiful mind. So let's talk about the ego mind versus the divine mind. What is the difference between the ego mind and the divine mind? Well, the ego mind for me is a human mind, almost the carnal mind. To go out, survive, do what you can, earn your money, do your job, get by in the best way that you can. But when the dark night of the soul comes into you, this seems like it's the darkness, but in actual fact, it is the divine mind, a personal messenger from God. Now this is what you may call depression, because when you can't control the mind, you go into a depression because you just can't sort anything out. And this is why they prescribe you a tablet, because they're saying that depression is a disabled mind. It can't function properly. It's lost the ability to make choices. But I would like to call it the holy war within, because it is a holy war. when the ego mind fights the divine mind. And basically, there are two minds that are inside of you. I believe that's why we've got the left side and we have the right side. Spiritually, I believe it's when you get the balance. And I think because the mind or the brain is split into two, you have to find the middle pathway. Buddha spoke of this. One mind is the ego mind, and that's what you do every day in your life. That's the material side of you. And then you have got the other mind that keeps on chattering. Who is that? And we're trying to pay attention to it, but it's too much. You might be working on something, you might be talking to somebody, but there seems to be this chattering that goes on the other side of the mind. So you've got one side that's material, and on the right side, you have the creative mind. Now for me, the creative mind is the spiritual mind. It's where you receive your messages. It's where you connect to your divine self, your beamy spirit, let's say. I'm going to open you up to the divine mind and show you the different possibilities of who you are. One of the greatest truths ever said on the planet is, know thyself, meaning, do you know thy mind? If you know thy mind, then you are on the road to enlightenment. You are on the road to love, happiness, joy, and peace. You can also be on the road to pure potential. When you look at everything that you do, it's all based upon your thoughts. The quality of your thoughts determines how you are feeling, and what you decide to do in life. You may have a business mind, so therefore your mind is all about business. You may have a creative mind, so therefore everything that you think about comes from a creative value. Basically, the mind is a relationship, and you, yourself, your body, your mind, and your energy is having a relationship within your own mind. So the truth of the saying is, mind how you go. Be very aware of what your mind is saying to you. It's about trying to get in control of the mind, the words, the vocabulary that we use that determines who we are as a being. So we're going to start with the negativity of the mind. So let's start with the confused mind. What is a confused mind? A lot of us have gone through our lives and say, I'm very confused. I don't know how to make choices. I don't know what to do. I'm scared of messing up. I'm scared of making the wrong choice. I just don't know what to do. I don't actually know what's happening in my life, and I don't know what my life is all about. These are great questions. But where is it all coming from? It's coming from your mind. So the mind is getting confused. And the reason why it's confused is because it's waiting for a command. It's waiting for you to choose something. Now, as I said, it's between the ego mind and the divine mind. Basically, the true mind or the illusionary mind. So the confused mind is trying to state to you, are you going to be working your life from the ego mind, or do you want to expand and become more aware of your divine mind? Almost like having your own personal teacher within. And because of this confusion, this is what I call the holy war. And it's between the Christ and the Antichrist, if you like, because what we've got there when we say and we mention the Christ and the Antichrist, you've got the Christ that represents love, and then of course you've got the Antichrist that doesn't represent love. So this is where we form a bond about loving the self. Loving the self or understanding the self can only come from understanding the mind. So, does the mind love you? Does the mind hate you? Does the mind guide you, teach you on how to heal? Or, on the Antichrist side of it all, call it the devil if you like, is it trying to kill you off? So therefore, you have the wrong attitude or you have the right attitude. You can almost call it angels and demons. Inside every being, there is an angel, but there's also a demon. And this is where your negativity and your positivity comes from. But what we're trying to do here is to find the balance. You have to form the balance, and this is what I believe is the middle way. And this is what the confused mind is setting you up for. When we look at people that have got themselves depressed, that's from an overloaded, confused mind that's taken too long to make a choice. I believe the dark night of the soul comes in and helps you to make that choice. And when you take too long on making a choice, depression sets in because you cannot and you have not found the answer to the choice or the answer to the question to the choices that you have given yourself. So the confused mind is had by everyone. Billions of people walk around with a confused mind because they don't actually know how to use the mind properly. So how do we get through and understand the confused mind? We have to look at it and say, okay, who is actually controlling the mind? And this is the point that I really want you to understand. And this is the point where you have to write down what's actually happening. And I used to think it like this. If it was still in my mind, it felt like I was still on the same chapter. Nothing was changing because the question was still going around and around in my mind. And I believe this is where you lose energy. Once you lose energy, you start to become depressed. Once you become depressed, you start to become tired. Once you become tired, you become ill. And there is that point where you've slipped so far low in your life, you believe that you can never get out of it. So to understand the mind is the most important part of your transformation. And the dark night of the soul, your spirit messenger, comes in and helps you to decide. Yes, it seems very dark. Yes, it does seem like it wants to kill you off because it's pushing you up against the wall. It's telling you, make up your mind. So let's have a look at the controlling the mind. Who is actually controlling the mind? Well, obviously, it's got to be you. But again, 90% of people do not know how to control the mind. So let's look at the mind and let's see what goes on in the mind. Basically, what is it? It's a bunch of words, sentences that you string together that form a paragraph, that form a story about your life, your dramas and your situations, or a choice that you have to make. I mean, let's face it, people find it hard to even make a choice of what to have for dinner. So when it comes to choices about who you are as a being and what you want to do in your life, the choice becomes hard because we're not using our language properly. We are not commanding the mind to help you, your body, your mind, and your energy to experience what it is that you want to create. So you have to create something within the mind first before you can come up with an idea, bring it out into the open, write down your ideas, or write down your pains. Write down what the darkness is actually saying to you, because it's so much easier to be able to read what you have written. And what you'll find is, once you keep a journal, 6 months later down the line, you start to write again. You're writing down your problem, you're writing out your negativity. But if you go back earlier, 6 months ago, you will find you're still writing the same question. Now, have you found an answer? So when you get to that point, when you see the repetitive pattern, you have to say to yourself, now, I've been writing this question for far too long and it needs to be answered. Now remember, you are in control of you, your life and your body and your mind and your energy. So it's you that needs to identify the answer to the question. So if you've got a bunch of words scrambling around in your mind, we call it a language. Whatever language you speak, Japanese, German, French, they're all just words. They're words that you've been taught from a very early age. It's the only form of communication. Words that are put together to string a sentence, that string up a story, and that is how we use the mind in today's language. So, it's about controlling the mind and understanding the words that you use in the mind. So you have the power and control over words that are being used. So, to control the confused mind, we have to use certain words, don't we? If you tell the mind that you are confused, then the body will follow. Your actions will also follow. and your whole life will be confused. So controlling the mind is one of the most important things we want to do here. If we start at the point of controlling the mind, the next part of that story is going to be about mastering the mind. And that means when you have finally got it. And that means you are in control and you are actually using the signal in your mind to create bigger and better things in your life. But you need to use your mind like this. One of the things that you need to understand is that all beings want to be healed, but they believe it's love and happiness. You cannot discover love and happiness until you are healed. And healing means understanding your own darkness, which means to understand your journey, why it's happened, why you met the people in your life, and why you're feeling so down, depressed, and feeling like you've got no energy. For instance, let's go with the three minds. You've got the confused mind, which means I basically don't know who I am, what I'm doing, and how I've got into the state that I'm in, and this is where it's all been confusing. You can be in a relationship that's confusing. So in the relationship, what is somebody doing? They are being controlling. So in their mind, they are being controlled, and they are controlling you. So therefore, the controlling mind is more stronger than the confused mind. It's someone else's mind that is controlling you that has confused you. How many times can you hear your father saying something to you? You don't want to do that. Don't do it that way. And what I want from you is to grow up and be this type of woman. You've lost control of yourself straight away. Basically, you've lost free will. And that is a major breakdown in a lot of relationships because who is in control? So you have mastering the mind. Even in the relationship side, do you listen to them? Or do you try to understand and make up your own mind of what's going on? Trying to be in control of the mind is a very powerful transformation. So you have trying to control the mind and someone else is trying to control it. So you have to be very aware of what somebody is saying to you, because if you lose your mind, then that means you've given over your will to somebody else. And then that means you've lost total control, and therefore you're listening to what they're saying, and all you're doing is obeying their command. I believe women have this a little bit harder in their life because they feel they want a man to control them, which is a bit strange really, considering we're all made equal. You're here to experience life, but I think this comes from the father issue. You've always wanted your father to love you, and you've always wanted to be able to listen to your father as your father gives you great advice. We all want great advice, but who do we listen to? And quite frankly, there is no one greater than your own mind. So when the dark night of the soul comes in, it wants you to be in total control of your own mind and your own actions, because you are a soul and you are here in equal amounts, and you are here to experience your potential, and you're here to experience the greatest journey of what we call life. When we look at the mind, it's all been controlled with certain rules and certain regulations and certain laws that you have to abide by. And because we don't know them laws and regulations, we can actually get confused by that. And so therefore, that's when your mind starts to get out of control. There is many people on this planet. You have people that have an intelligent mind. They have an inspirational mind. They have the bored mind and the powerful mind. But then, people that are going through the dark night of the soul see, what has consumed you is the fearful mind. And it's this fearful mind that has got you trapped. And being in fear stops you. And this is what the dark night of the soul does, see? It stops you in your tracks. Fear has caught you. It's trying to get you to understand what is going on within your life. Having a fearful mind can lead you into a suicide because you believe that it's so difficult and that you will always be like this. and you will never change. I'm here to tell you that we can change. I didn't think I could, but once I understood me, and I started to realize that it was the relationship of myself within my mind and the words that I was using that was confusing me or trying to kill me off. So let's look at the fearful mind. What is the fearful mind? Trust me, there is nothing greater than trying to understand why you have a mind that is full of fear. And this is where the dark night of the soul comes in, see, because when this comes in and you believe that something else is talking to you, explaining things to you, that is totally out of control. That is very fearful. And through this fear, see, you can become very angry, because having an angry mind is going to have angry emotions. Having angry emotions is going to upset the body and make you very unwell. And this is why we talk about healing. Healing the mind will be the cure. We become very angry because of the mind. When it comes from the level of fear, fear is something that almost feels like something is being taken away from you. And this is where we say, losing the mind, losing the plot. I can't cope. Fear of losing the mind is an awful feeling. Feeling starts to become agitated. Feeling starts to come into play because what's going on is that your mind and your emotions are now having a conversation. And who will win? Are your emotions strong, or is it your mind that's even stronger? Really think about what I've just said there. You are having a conversation between your mind and your feelings. And if you are pent up with emotions of fear, or fear of emotions, then somewhere along the line, you are not trusting. Is it your feelings that are true, or is it the mind that is true? And basically, we all fear losing the mind. I think this has got something deep-rooted to what's happening on the planet and growing out of all proportion, and that's dementia. Is dementia actually a form of shutting down? I believe so. It's when the mind and the emotions basically give up and say, I can't deal with this. And so therefore, we go into the form of dementia. And so therefore, we forget who we are. But when you really look at dementia, see, it's about being caught in one chapter. And the thing about dementia is, it's a decreasing or decaying of the brain as it shrinks. But as it shrinks, it takes you back to your childhood. And so therefore, that's why people that are experiencing dementia, they may be 15, even though they're 50. And then as soon as they start to get down to a 3-year-old, and they start talking like a 3-year-old, that means that the brain and the mind is going back through the journey. So healing the mind is very important, because we want to do that now while we can remember, while we can understand it. But losing the mind brings up a lot of fear for a lot of people, because they all know somebody that has lost their mind. You may call them the nutter. You may look at them and think, well, the lights are on, but no one's in. And where does this all stem from? It is stemmed from the confused mind. So, a fearful mind is filled with what? Fearful words. If you were to say that I am fearful of something, or I fear I may be a failure, I fear that my business may not work, I fear that I may never get out of depression, I fear that I may never find love. They're all fears. But think about it again. They are words in your mind. You are commanding the mind to adapt to the fear. And as you use the fear, again, the body will respond, and your actions will also respond, and they will respond in fear. And that means that you will walk in fear. It's very unfair, isn't it? That we lead a life in fear. Your childhood could be full of fear. Every drama and situation that we seem to encounter in what we call a human life has elements of fear. Will I be good at my job? Will somebody love me? Will I find the confidence? Can I communicate properly? It's a shame, really, that we have a life, and it is all based upon fear. But look at life. Look at the news. Look at the newspapers. Everyone, technically, is in fear. And the reason why they're all in fear is because of their mind. But the interesting thing is, everyone wants love and happiness. Everyone wants to enjoy their life. But you know, even people feel the fear of being happy. Why do you feel the fear of happiness? It's because you fear that somebody's going to take away your happiness. If you're a very loving person, what tends to happen is that you meet somebody that gives you so much fear that you lose your love. And once you lose your love, you start to shut down. So let's have a look at the thinking mind. We've all got a thinking mind. It's how we operate. We all think, and maybe we overthink. Overthinking is an overload of the mind, and so therefore, again, the body shuts down. I believe this is where epilepsy comes from. It's fear of not knowing that you can control yourself. As we know, everybody thinks. But what do you think? You may be talking to somebody, engaging in a conversation, but you're still thinking. You may even be thinking about what you're going to say next. We think about things that we do in the course of the day. Think about washing up. You think about food. You think about when the children come home from school. You think about you got to clean the car. You think about you got to clean your house. We think about what we did yesterday. We think about what we did when we was 4 years old. We think about the bad relationship. We think about how our parents treated us. We think about everything. But the interesting thing is you have been told what to think. The idea behind mind how you go is being in control about what you think about. We think about many moments, happy moments, sad moments. We think about when we were born and what we went through. So the thinking mind is a mind that reminds you of the things that have happened in your life. So the mind is a reminder. But when you look at a minder, what does a minder do? Pop star gets a minder to look after them, to protect them. I looked at that and thought, how about my mind protecting me? I wanted my mind to guide me with truth and honesty. I wanted my mind to be the teacher. Again, this is where the divine mind comes into play and overrides your ego mind. And in that state of that you feel that you are dying, that's the ego mind that's dying. But the ego mind is going to try and hold on. It doesn't want the divine mind. Why? Because that means I have to change everything about me. The thinking mind has got you worried. It's worried about tomorrow. And it's also going to worry about next week, next month, and next year. It's continually thinking. When I hear people tell me that they are bored, it's hard to believe what you are bored of. But what I realized is that you are actually bored with the same thoughts. And so therefore, the same thoughts produce the same experience. We've all come onto this planet to experience the joy of life. We've all come on the planet to experience the love of who we are. But most importantly, what can you offer life? There are many people out there that you meet. You have to look at it this way. Are they there to heal you, or are they there to kill you? A person that you meet, even in a relationship, yes, the outside package may look lovely. They may be the most beautiful person in the world. But what you're meeting is a mind. And inside that beautiful package, you have to understand what mind are they using. Because everyone can be beautiful on the outside, but they can be very ugly on the inside. And if they are very ugly in the inside, that means that their mind is then going to become your mind. See what I'm saying? Meeting somebody is an exchange of minds. And so therefore, the being that is acting in front of you is the way that they're acting because that is what their mind is telling them. That mind has been built from the moment they were born. So be very careful with people that you meet because it's their mind that you are meeting. So when you look at the mind, it has become boring. And this is when the dark night of the soul, see, comes in and says, okay, you're bored. We need a new lease of life. We need to change something. But what is it that we need to change? And I believe the dark messenger is there to help you to change it, to change what you think about, because technically we're bored with the way that we think, we're bored with the repetitive pattern, and when you sort of think about it, you actually become bored with other people's conversations. The whole world becomes boring. And that is the point where you sort of step back and say to yourself, yeah, I may be depressed, but think about it again, you're actually bored with everything that has gone on. And so therefore we look for a different life. We look for some inspiration. We look for a break in the pattern of what it is that we're going through. And even though the dark night of the soul is really getting you to look at your mind, and it's going over and over and over the same thing, this is where confusion comes in. And that is the reason why we get depressed, because it becomes boring. You are fed up saying the same old things over and over again. And that's where you start to lose energy and you get tired. You can't get up in the morning. And the reason being is because your mind is so confused. It's out of control and it's fearful thinking. Your thoughts are making you fear about what tomorrow will bring. And so therefore your thoughts are actually creating boredom. And that boredom then goes into your energy system, into your body. And so therefore you will find yourself telling yourself that you are completely bored. There's no hope. There's no future. There's nothing in it for me. Can you see how this is all working now? So basically, what are we looking for? We're looking for a great mind. Look at Einstein. What did he have really? It wasn't about his image. He had a great mind. All the creative beings that have been on the planet, what do they possess? A great mind. Even if you want to go to a spiritual guru, what is their mind? Well, it's a spiritual mind, it's an all-knowing mind, and they've worked everything out. So what is the mind? It is a collection of words and a collection of experiences. So you have the past mind, you have the present mind, and of course you have the future mind. And this is why all spiritual people tell you that you've got to be in the now. What does that mean? Is that you need to be in the mindset that is dealing with where you are now. And I also believe that this is where the dark night of the soul captures you, because the pain that your mind is delivering to your body actually keeps you in the now, because that's what pain actually does. We got people that have a spiritual mind. We've got a mind that's actually awakening. So in the dark night of the soul, when you really think about it again, what is the dark night of the soul trying to get you to do? Is to awaken to the mind. I feel that every soul on the planet should be achieving is the divine mind. So what does consciousness actually mean? Consciousness is the way that you see things, but mainly it's about the way that you think about things. But what I'm trying to teach you here is about the way that you think about yourself. So what is the highest value that you can give yourself? And that is the divine mind. The dark night of the soul, your messenger, wants you to have a divine mind. The Bible has spoken about it. Many spiritual religions speak of it. And the sad thing about that is many people have controlled that divine mind, that you can't have it and that you will never have that. So it's either controlled by a church or a synagogue or a mosque. And that's where these teachers are there teaching you about their scriptures. But what is it that they're really teaching you? It's about the mind of. They're filling your mind with someone else's words. See, there's the word of control, the controlling mind again. So be very careful who is teaching you, because I want you to become the teacher of your own mind. So if you listen to too many people, what you're listening to is too many minds. And this is where you get confused. And for all the beings that are on the spiritual journey, what you're listening to is other people's theories. So trying to understand your divine mind is the greatest form of transformation, and it's being in control of that mind. And don't forget, I said it's about using certain words in a certain sentence, in a certain paragraph, in a certain story. Because if you allow someone else to control you, that means they're actually teaching you. And that means you will never ever know thyself, and you will always be out of control with a confused mind. So if you've got a confused mind, you can have a conflicting mind. You can have a mind that is full of choices. So let's go into healing the mind. How do we heal the mind? What does that actually mean? We are now evolving as a species, and healing has become quite apparent. It's a big thing. There are many magazines now, there are many spiritual teachers, and there's more books on spirituality than there's ever been before, and what they're all trying to do is to be able to get you to understand the power and the gift of your mind. So let's look at healing the mind. It's about whether or not you can heal the body, or you can heal your emotions. But most importantly, what is the main thing that you want to heal? It's the mind. So how do we heal the mind that is fearful, that is confused, that is conflicting? We hear many people say that you've got to have a positive mind. But the way that I see it is this: you cannot have a positive mind when your mind is full of negativity. So what we need to do is to understand the confused mind, the controlling mind, the fearful mind. Once we understand that, we don't have to do anything that is positive other than understand the negative side of the mind. Because once you understand the negative side of the mind, it neutralizes itself, which means you get that ha-ha moment. Because the gold is in the darkness. And this is why the dark night of the soul comes in, because if you can understand what the darkness is teaching you, then you will understand what positivity is all about. Understanding the dark mind can only leave you with a loving mind. You cannot replace a loving mind to override the darkness, because the darkness is actually your teacher. So when people say about positive affirmations, they don't really work. In actual fact, you may need negative affirmations, because negative affirmations will give you a feeling to let you know that you're on the right track. Because if you can understand the negativity of your mind and your thoughts, then you can understand that abusing yourself means you're thinking incorrectly. So you've got two sides of the mind, two sides of the brain. You've got the left-hand side, which I said earlier on, is the logical mind. And on the right side, you have the creative mind. So again, we're working on many different levels of understanding the power of the mind and the many beings that are on this planet that have different minds that we meet along our journey. So can you start to see the importance of mind how you go as being the greatest statement of transformation? And as I have said, your parents or your grandparents have always said that to you. Mind how you go. Everyone is a mind, and people vary in different ideas of how they are using their minds. How many relationships do you get into and discover that in the beginning they was very nice to you, and they told you everything that was right. They told you how beautiful you were. But have you not noticed how jealousy starts to creep in? How? Why? Where did that transformation come in? It's because inside of them is a jealous mind. Their mind is full of jealousy. If you are very angry as a being, then their mind is very angry. So mind how you go when you meet somebody. So always listen to your intuition, because technically your intuition will always warn you that says, be careful. This being is not who you think they are, because that being is not who they think they are. So can you now understand that the darkness of the soul is teaching you to have a divine mind, the all-seeing mind? And this is where they say about activating the sixth chakra point, the third eye, the all-seeing mind. Think about it. But you can only get to that point once you've understood all the other minds that are within you. So what you're trying to do to find the true self, feel the true self and be the true self, it's all about the mind. It's having a divine mind. Even Jesus spoke about this. It was the mind of Jesus that enabled him to communicate or bring to the planet a completely different new idea about what life meant. And this is what spiritual gurus do. They are teaching you how to understand the mind. Buddhism is very much into the mind, how to have a peaceful mind. They are trying to get you in meditation to understand that if you can control the mind and have a peaceful mind, there you will find the balance. And so therefore, that's the peaceful mind, and that is what Buddhism teaches. But I teach Beamism, and Beamism is about being me as it is in being you, and it's about balancing mind emotions. There's the Beamy, B-M-E, balancing mind emotions. So let's have a look now at the emotional mind. Everybody will say that we are emotional beings and that life is very emotional. But again, where does it all come from? Why does it affect us that way? Where is it being stored? Well, of course, all these emotions are actually being stored in your body and in your mind. So therefore, an emotional being has an emotional mind. But of course, you can look at your life or your journey as being very emotional. I hear many people talk about that life is supposed to be very emotional. But is it really? Or is it your mind that is just telling you that it's an emotional journey? If we have a mind that is telling us that life is a very emotional journey and everything you do and everything that happens will affect you emotionally, and if your mind gets affected emotionally, then your body gets infected. And so therefore, so do your actions. So being very emotional, will you ever discover what love is all about? No, because emotional feelings are words that we've connected to that create an energy, and that energy gets stored within you. So therefore the dark night of the soul comes in and wants you to really look at the words that you're using. Every action that you make is caused through an emotion. Every feeling that you feel in your body is caused through an emotion. I believe that's where illness comes in, and that is affecting so many people on the planet, so much so that when they go to the doctors to explain to the doctor, why am I in so much pain? The doctors can do all the tests. You can go to the hospital and do even more tests, and you know what they'll say to you? There's nothing wrong. So then you have to look at that great saying that I mentioned earlier on, mind how you go. It's all in the mind. And I truly believe this. And the reason why I truly believe this is because this is what I went through. So depression comes up as an emotion. A depressed mind, a depressed being is full of emotions. Emotions get trapped in the body and the body starts to become unwell. But we're at the stage in life where we don't want to feel like that. So we need to heal ourselves. So all healing comes from the power of the mind. Everything is in the mind so that we have this emotional mind that we're needing to understand. And the dark night of the soul comes in, see, and teaches you about all of these different minds that you are containing within you. But the dark night of the soul wants you just to have one mind. And for me, that's what I call the beamy mind. This is my mind. I am in control of my mind, and my mind teaches me about life. It teaches me about experience. It teaches me about fear and conflicting ideas, and it also teaches me about relationship. Somebody may say something to you. You will get affected. It's called hitting the red button. And so therefore you explode into rage, into a temper, and sometimes it turns into a fight because something has been said, because the emotional mind has been activated. So therefore this starts off the anger. Why? Because you're losing control of the mind. And how many people say sorry to you? It's like they say something awful to you and they say, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say that. That means their mind is kicking in and saying what's on their mind, and so therefore they affect you and they damage you. And now you've got to go through a healing process of understanding why did they say that. And so therefore, you're in pain. So somebody else's mind of words has now caused you to be in pain, and that has shut you down, and now you don't want to communicate, and now you don't want to love. And this turns into a mental mind. So let's have a look at the mental mind. Now, this is the tough one. But a mental mind can also be a spiritual one as well. Let's look at life of what's going on here at the moment. It seems like everyone's got a mental disorder. And so therefore, they are associating depression as mentally disturbed. And so therefore, we could even claim that to be schizophrenia. What is schizophrenia? Well, it's the voices in the mind. So the mental mind can actually be quite creative if used in a creative way, because really and honestly, when you're creative, or you are different, or you're stepping away from the herd of what it means to be a human being, or even being spiritual, do you know people think you're mental? So every identity that's going on out there, if you do anything that's any different from what everyone else is doing, you're mental. And so therefore, they've even labelled that. And apparently, they've got a tablet for that will actually destable your mental mind. No, that's not true. That's not right. Sometimes I think it's great to have a mental mind because I believe that's where all creativity comes from. You may come up with great ideas that you think are mental. Maybe someone else thinks you're mental. Maybe that can never be achieved. Especially when it comes to having a divine mind or even a spiritual mind, if that is going against what everyone else's mind is all about. And don't forget, everyone's mind has been programmed to think the same, because by them thinking the same, they're easily controlled. But when you look at the mental mind, we need to look at it in a positive way. You've got the negative effects of being totally mental in a way that you're not reliable for your actions. Your mind is not stable enough to be able to keep you focused enough, so that comes under the borders of being mental. It's almost like a mental mind is like having a child mind, and they say that a child mind changes every 5 seconds. That's why 1 minute they're standing next to you, and next minute they're walking off down the street. It's because their mind keeps changing. And that's what people do. We've either got people that are stuck in their mind, or we got people that keep changing their mind, and so therefore that's the confusion. But the dark night of the soul comes in and says, we need to make up your mind. So when we look at the mental mind, how can you control a mental mind? What a mental mind is doing is going all over the place. It keeps changing its ideas of who you are as a being, and so therefore the mental mind tries to consume you. I look at that as the mental mind, but I can also look at that as the demonic mind. There is a demonic side of the mind, and a lot of the times that is the mind that we are communicating with. And even in the dark night of the soul, see, you will think that this mind is demonic. There's something here that is making me feel in fear. It may even come in your dreams. Because even the mind doesn't shut off when you're sleeping, it seems that even your dreams are very fearful. So what is a demonic mind? It's the opposite to the loving mind. Now everyone on the planet looks for love. They want to understand love. They want to achieve love. And they want to be in love. But what we do is that we look for love on the outside of ourselves, i.e. in a relationship. We look for love in certain things that we buy. We look for love in a building or a home that we would like to live in. We look for the love of money. We look for love in many different ways. But where is the real love? And the real love is in the mind. To have a loving mind is what everybody seeks. Some people may even think that's mental. But it is the next step towards the divine mind. So the loving mind is the mind that has beautiful words, and it is as simple as that. It loves life, it loves the experience, it loves who you are, and it loves what you think. It loves the choices that it makes, and it loves being in control of itself rather than letting other beings control you. It loves what it thinks. It loves what it creates. It loves what it does. And it loves the way that you look. That is the loving mind. And of course, you may be thinking that that's mental. Because a lot of people say, yes, but I don't know how to love myself. And people think that loving yourself is by looking at yourself in the mirror and saying, woohoo, don't I look great today? But that's not it. A loving mind is about respect. A loving mind is the way that you think about yourself. And it doesn't matter what you look like, you are built in the way that you look. It can't be helped. So try not to put yourself down because your hair is fuzzy or too curly, or your nose is too big, or your chin is too fat, or your eyes are not the right colour. You need to stop that. And once you stop that mental abuse, because it is mental abuse, it neutralizes the abuse, and so therefore we discover love. And for me, that's where I understand what is the peaceful mind. And the peaceful mind is when you stop abusing yourself. That's why we all look for a relationship, or for somebody that you want to love you. And if they love you, then you may love them. But if after a while they are angry with you, where does that loving mind go to? It becomes very angry. The love that you once possessed has all of a sudden disappeared. But what has disappeared? The loving mind has been replaced with a humiliated mind, a fearful mind, even a non-loving mind. So mind how you go comes into play. Always mind how you go. Always treat yourself with the respect. You may not get that respect from anyone else out there, but in your divine self, what the God would want from you is to stop abusing yourself. But because we've led a life, what we call a human life, everyone abuses someone somewhere in their journey. There's always an anger between someone else's mind. There's no love for someone else's culture. There's no love for someone else's religion because they believe that their religion is the correct one. But the correct religion is the one and the true one that understands all religions. So therefore, that's why I bring to the planet beamism. You could call it a religion if you like. I reckon there are 8 billion people that should be into the beamy religion, which means to be into themselves, to understand themselves, to understand their minds. And so therefore, creating a perfect mind, creating the perfect words, understanding the emotional values of the mind, finding the balance within the conflicting mind will lead you to the divine mind. And it is the divine mind, the all-seeing mind, that wants you to understand who you are. And this, again, is the importance of the dark night of the soul. Everyone searches for real love. As I have said, real love is in the mind. If you meet a being that has an argument with you, and this being may have loved you, they may have loved you for the first 3 months, for the first 6 months, for the first year, and all of a sudden they become fearful and they become angry. That is a mindset. They then pass that mindset on to you, and you start to get upset and you lose your loving mind. So therefore, was that real love? No, it's not real love. And this is why people fight in a relationship. It's not over because someone spent too much money or they have dented the car. What you have done is unsettled the mind. You have taken that mindset from love and you have put it into the fearful mind or the controlling mind or the conflicting mind. So that is never real love, because once you understand real love and the divine mind love, no one out there should be able to control you. So what we're always doing in relationships is battling someone else's mind. That is all there is. That is what we do, and that is what life seems to be about. It's about the power of the mind, the controlling of minds. So now, hopefully, you're starting to understand the power and the gift in this one sentence called Mind How You Go. Because to me, That would be the message. If I had 30 seconds to speak to God, I would ask him, how do you want me to be? What is the message you would give to me? And I believe God would say, mind how you go. That would be the one great message. To have the loving mind is actually a real good assessment that you have understood all the other minds you have met on your journey, which means the mental mind, the demonic mind, the emotional mind, the conflicting mind, the ego mind, and also the selfish mind. But most importantly is the love of the mind. So the vocabulary that you're using, use the words that's loving to suit you. And this is where you will find freedom. And this is how you will understand the darkness of the soul. So when we look at the word freedom, what are we freeing ourselves from? It's the mind. To have a free mind, a free thinking mind, and the only way that it can become free is by understanding who you are. That's where know thyself comes into play, which means I am free to think the greater thoughts in my mind, which is mind how you go, have a loving mind, be careful what you say to yourself, be careful where your judgments are within your mind, and once you have balanced mind emotions, you then become mindfully enlightened. And this is the enlightened mind that most spiritual beings will talk to you about. What we're trying to achieve here is a beautiful mind. I want to be a beautiful mind entity, and I want to live on beautiful mind earth, and I'm sure you do. And the only way that this can happen is when you have been awakened to the negativity of your mind, to then be able to work with the negativity of that mind, to then find the positivity within that mind, and that can only be done by understanding the negativity. Hence, this is why the dark night of the soul comes into you. So let's look at the Christ divine mind. Let's look at Jesus for the moment. What did he bring to the planet? What did they call him? They called him the Christ. What was his mind thinking at that particular time? It was a Christ mind. How was it a Christ mind? It's because he had a God mind. So he used to think about God. He did things in a godly way. So therefore, in a godly way, reduces it to a loving mind, an intuitive mind, and in comes the divine mind. So Jesus had a divine mind, basically a creative mind. So they say Jesus was the Son of God. What does God mean? Does that mean life? Nobody really understands what God is, but how about if you could think in the way that God would have thought? How about having the initial thoughts of God? And what did God want from everyone? Is to have a loving mind. Look at Buddha. What did Buddha bring to the planet? Buddha brought the awakening mind, because if you ask Buddha about God, are you God, Buddha? Buddha would say, no, I'm just awakened. But what did he awaken to? Why did he sit in meditation for so long? Because he was trying to understand the mind. So Buddhism is always about mindfulness. And once you have the awakening mind, where do we go from there? It's the conscious mind, see? The awakening mind, which I call A-B-Me, awakening body, mind, energy. I see, which is intelligent consciousness, awakening body, mind, energy. And that's when we arrive at the divine mind. And the divine mind comes from freedom. And it comes from freedom of the programmed mind, which is the freedom of the lower self. The lower self mind of thinking, the hatred, the anger, battling depression and emotions. These are all lower self understandings. These are all lower self workings of the mind. And there is nothing wrong with that. It's just the way that you have been taught from the programming. Because your parents and your teachers, they all work from a certain mindset. Their minds are filled with certain things, and so therefore they pass them on to you, and therefore you take on their mind. So there again comes into mind how you go, which means be careful of your own mind in the way that you teach your children even. If you are an angry mum or an angry dad, what do you think that will be doing to the future of the planet, your children? That means you are investing in anger and confusion, and you are putting that into your children. And then you wonder why when they grow up, they are very angry with you. Why? Because you showed them anger. Your mind gave them an angry mind. Again, it's all in the mind. Your emotions from your past is representing who you are as a parent, and so therefore that's how you will teach your child. So within your mind, this conflicting mind, the dark night of the soul, demonic mind that it seems, what would be your greatest asset? And I've asked many people this question, what do you want from life? And they say, I just want peace of mind. And I say, really? I say, do you think that you'd be quite happy with a peaceful mind? And they say, yes. And I said this, would you be bored with a peaceful mind? Because your mind hasn't kept you busy? Think about that for a little while. If I left you in a room and said I'd be 10 minutes and was an hour, how do you think your peaceful mind would affect you? You wouldn't have a peaceful mind when I walked back into that room. You'd have a killer mind because you would want to kill me. So what is meditation? Everyone talks about meditation, and it's the quietened mind. But getting to the quietened mind, quite frankly, is very difficult in meditation, and that's what I believe, that I've never really listened to anyone that totally understands meditation. Now, I'm not saying everyone, but the people that I've met along my journey, I've never really truly understood what meditation is all about. It's very difficult to have a quietened mind when I think meditation is a place that you should be in to ask good questions. Then quieten the mind, and then hopefully you can come up with an answer. The enlightened mind of Buddha teaches us to have the quietened mind, the peaceful mind. Again, you need to understand first the emotional mind, the mental mind, the angry mind, the confused mind, and the conflicting mind. Because if you don't understand their minds, you are never, ever going to get to the place of a peaceful mind. So now, can you see how we're working back down the ladder and back up the ladder? This is where we go backwards and forwards in our journey. This is where we go backwards and forwards in our mind. You have many people out there that hate. Why do they hate? Because their mind is full of hatred. You've got many people out there that are criminals. So what is in their mind? They have a criminal mind. You have got people out there that want to kill people. So within their mind, what have they got? They've got a killer mind. But the killer mind is still stemming from the ego, the emotional ego, the conflicting ego. And where does this all come from? It comes from their journey, which has got them confused within their mind, so therefore they lose control of their self, and so therefore they lose the identity of the mind, and this builds up into a being that wants to become a murderer, or somebody, technically, that has no compassion about killing you or stealing things from you. Compassion comes from the heart, as they say, but many of you out there have been on this spiritual journey, find it very difficult to understand the heart. So let's look at the compassionate mind. When we say things with a compassionate mind, we then discover a compassionate heart. And compassionate mind works with a compassionate heart. If you can find the balance within these two, that's what I call the heartist within. It's when the heart and the mind and the body is working in a compassionate way. It's because your mind is understood all of the other minds, so that leaves you with a mind that is compassionate. And a compassionate mind will open the heart This is where you will understand the true language of the divine mind. If you have the words of compassion in your mind, then your heart is full of compassion. Your heart can be full of compassion, but you have a hatred mind, then that's where we get confused. We get a conflicting mind between the heart and the mind. And again, this is why gurus speak about speaking from the heart. But the mind and the heart has to work in conjunction with each other. And that, again, can only be done when you've distinguished all the other minds that are in your mind or in your head. They say that the kingdom of heaven is within. What is the kingdom of heaven? It's a mindset. If you talk to most Christians, they speak of heaven. That means their minds are full of heaven. But do they really know what heaven is? When we go to the true teachings of, let's say, Jesus said, the kingdom of heaven is within. What was he really speaking about? He was speaking about the mind. So we have heard about the mind of Jesus and how he healed many people. What was he healing them from? Their minds. What about the stories about when he took out the demons from people? What does that mean, healing the demon? Well, it means the demonic mind. In each of us is a demonic mind, and of course, this is where we hear Jesus talking about healing the mind, being able to heal somebody, be able to heal the blindness, to raise them up from their deathbed. What does it really mean? It was all in the mind. If you can control the mind and have a divine mind, which to me means mind how you go, get rid of the controlling mind that has been controlling the masses, find your own self in that, and therefore you will understand what Jesus was talking about, which was very divine, very creative, very loving, very compassionate, but most importantly, a very powerful mind. He had the warrior's mind, because a warrior's mind can still have love and compassion. Direction and intuitiveness, and a divine mind can still be a warrior, because a warrior is there to put things right. So going back to the beginning of this CD, ego mind versus the divine mind, can you see the differences now between the different ideas, the battle of the conflicting holy war within you? Can you see now how depression has got you into a place that you are so confused because of all the conflicting minds that's within you? And when you look at the dark night of the soul, don't see it as a darkness that has come into your life to kill you off. It's trying to get you to understand your mind, and it's trying to get you to kill off the bad mind, which I call bad mind emotions. So let me say this to you. What would you ask an angel if you had the opportunity? Or let's go one step even greater. What would you ask God if you had the chance? What would be your question? And what do you believe the answer would be? For me, I believe it would be, mind how you go. And I also believe that being me, a be me being says to me, mind how you go, because I believe that this is one of the greatest truths I have ever discovered. And so many people say it, but they don't realize what they're saying. And to be honest with you, I think it is closely linked to the God message. And I also believe that even Jesus may have said this, because Jesus was actually saying, be me. Why did he say that? It's because God said to Jesus, be me. So let's say, if God stepped into your living room, what would be your great question? Well, I did just that. I had loads of questions, but I thought about it. And I thought, what would be the question? So here is my why question if God stepped into my room. I would say to God, how do you want me to be? And I'm sure God would reply, be me. And I would say, how? And God would say, by changing your mind. And that was it for me. That was my great question. How do you want me to be? And I believe the greatest answer that I have ever received is be me. And then it would be down to you to understand the gift and the power of being able to change your mind. But how do you change that mind? By changing the words. If God walked into your front room and you had 20 seconds to think about your question, because at that moment in time, if you are a very angry person, then you will have an angry mind. So therefore, your question to God would be very angry. If you are a loving being and you have always been loving, do you think your question to God would be a loving question? It would, wouldn't it? If you had a confused mind, what would you be asking God within your confusing question? Hopefully you would be looking to God to give you an answer. So I asked God, what do you want me to be? And God said, be me. So I said, how? And God said, change your mind. Mind how you go. And when I heard that, and I felt that, to me, that answered all of my questions. I am not a guru in such that I come from the Far East or lived in Tibet. I am an East End boy from London that has gone through life, experienced many forms of positivity and negative attitudes and reactions and experiences, and come to a point in my life that all I was being was a being that was controlled by my mind. And when I look at the messages that I receive from God, or my soul, or the dark night of the soul, you cannot beat the true saying and the power of 3 letters and the power of your true self, understanding the Be Me self. So the true source of life, the true meaning and purpose to life, is actually in 3 letters, 2 words. And no, that doesn't spell God. It actually spells Be Me. Because God is a 3-letter word, Be Me, B-M-E, is also a 3-letter word. And that is what I discovered is the meaning of life. And once you can understand them 3 letters, you will have become to understand the true saying, know thyself, which means know thy mind, know where that mind has come from, and know thy journey. You will have then mastered your body, mind, and emotions, which when you master your emotions and you have mastered your mind, you will become mindfully enlightened, which means you have controlled your mind. Controlling the mind controls the body, changes the chemical in your emotions, changes the energy of who you are, and this is the only place where you can find the divine mind, or the contented mind, the silent mind, the intelligent mind, and most importantly, the inspirational mind, the mind of communication, body-mind energy. I call this ICBME for short, intelligent communication, body-mind energy. So now, this is how I see my life as a be-me. I am an intelligent, conscious, body-mind energy, and I am being my experience. And the reason why I can understand my experience is because I have balanced my ego, I have balanced my emotions, I became mindfully empty, so there's the emptiness of the mind, and then I filled my mind up with the correct words and being able to speak to myself in the correct loving way. So let's look at how to be the true self. I say to people, find the true self, feel the true self, and be the true self. And people say to me, but what does that mean? I say, find the right mind. Be the right mind. Be contented with your thoughts within your mind, and your body will follow. Your body will heal. Use your mind creatively, logically, infinitely, positively, lovingly, and beautifully, then you will understand the process of Be Me. So when we get to the mind of Be Me, how did I get to understand my emotions? By using certain words in a certain order which said, balance my emotions. That's what I put into my mind. I put the command into my mind that said, mind, listen to me, balance my emotions. And so therefore, my mind took that on board, and immediately my body responded. Thank you for listening. I hope you've enjoyed this CD. Learn from the power and the gift of your own mind, and always discover the true being within you. So understand your emotions, understand the mind, understand the way that you treat yourself, understand the negativity, and remember this: the dark night of the soul is only killing off your confusing mind. Why? Because it wants you to become a beautiful mind entity. So please, mind how you go. My name is Trevor Owsley. Thank you for listening. If you'd like to know more about who I am and what I teach, then please visit my Facebook page, Trevor Owsley Teaching Beamism. See you there. Hi guys, my name is Trevor Owsley, teaching that there is another way through the dark night of the soul. I'm here today to introduce to you a Skype meeting, a consultation with me for 1 hour live, so that you can speak to me about your problem and your situation. Now, if you do fancy a Skype meeting with me, then go onto my Facebook page, which is Trevor Owsley Teaching Beamism. Drop me a message and I will get back to you with the details of how you can speak with me and explain what is going on within your journey. Because one of the things that I've discovered is there's nothing greater than finding someone that knows where you're at. This is one of the things that I always wanted to find, was somebody that knew me, somebody that could explain what on earth am I going through. So I'm opening the doors for you, to give you the chance to be able to come through and share with me your journey, so that I can share with you the information that saved my life. And I want to give this to you, because once you get this information and you work with this information, then who knows, maybe you will meet somebody else that is going through the dark night of the soul, or is going through depression and anxiety, or feels completely lost in life. I want to share with you this information so that you can then pass it on to somebody that may need it. Drop me a line on Facebook, Trevor Owsley Teaching Beamism. Send me a mail and I will give you all the instructions and the directions, and we can make a date and have a chat for 1 hour. Speak to you then.